So, weight loss and habits. What is the ideal formula? Let's talk about it. Hello, Thunderhawk. Coaching here, Will. Going to talk today about weight loss and habits, the ideal formula. So I'm bringing this up because when I think about building a happy, healthy life, how you feel in your body is a big part of it. The physical is a significant aspect of it. And this is coming from somebody who's lost 130 plus pounds. And I think it's important to take that element seriously when we think about mental health. And how we live our life via habits also kind of contributes to that. So you've probably heard it all before: exercise more, eat less, you'll lose weight. Yes, that's true in some ways, but how do you do that? And I guess that's what I'm trying to approach and tackle here today. So, in my opinion, kind of the ideal formula is to create a clear structure and set of habits for you that don't feel like a lot. So when you're setting habits, especially for weight loss, you're going to run into a few challenges here that I want to outline to help figure out what that ideal formula might be for you. And the things you're going to probably run into initially are that you're going to want to change a lot of things. A lot of change is not really a good idea, especially if you've had a set of habits for a long time. Your relationships are going to be really challenged when you look at changing those habits and look at that weight loss. That pint you like to go for on the weekends, it ain't it. You know, you might have to change that up, and then that's going to change how your friends respond to you, and then that's going to challenge those relationships and make things kind of awkward and uncomfortable in some ways, because you're not going to share the same kind of joy or the same kind of habits you would previously, right? So when you try and change, your relationships are a huge part of that for weight loss and habits. Full stop. Those are things that really need to be taken into account here, and like something you need to like reflect on, right? If I stop going and having a chippy on Friday night with my mates, how's that going to change my relationship with my mates? Am I still going to get to see them? And if I don't see them, like, then I'm going to have less social time in my life. Like, we're all social creatures, we all need people. That's really tough, right? And I think a lot of people don't expect how much resistance will be met with their change. So especially if you lose weight, you know, I've lost 130 plus pounds, as I've said. A lot of people treat me differently now. A lot of people treat me more favorably in some ways. A lot of people are more physically attracted to me than they were historically, that's for sure. And I think that's probably in part because I have better body confidence now, but also I'm probably more physically attractive, not morbidly obese. So, you know, we will gain weight for our own reasons, you know, because of just habits that were given to us that we didn't understand, you know, when we were younger, to protect ourselves in some ways, to give us emotional comfort. You know, the emotional comfort angle is a huge aspect of this, by the way, when we think about habits and weight loss and it being kind of an ideal formula to be sustainable after the loss period, right? Because I've, you know, tried to lose weight sustainably for years, and it's really, really hard to do. I kept coming into the relationship challenge with others, which is why I bring this up. But weight loss comes from steady, consistent change. I think we all kind of, like, a lot of us anyway, like, logically know that, but like doing that is really hard because that comes from an emotional place, right? If we've had a hard day at work, we're going to want to have a takeaway. We're going to want to reduce any additional effort and friction at home, right? And feeling like we can continue to sacrifice and do the hard thing. It's an insane ask for most of us, right? If not all of us, when we really think about it. So I think that's something we need to kind of take into account and kind of preempt as you build these habits. So don't make them too hard. Don't make a huge seismic amount of change quickly. That will fail. Incremental change is where the change will actually really happen, because your emotional brain has to catch up with the change. That takes a long time, especially if you change quite quickly. You also need to address those relationships. Think about those relationships. Think about how people are going to see you differently, potentially, right? We don't know till it happens, but we need to be kind of ready for how things will change as much as we kind of can be when we talk it through. Okay. So it might be that some relationships change, some relationships take more space in your life than others. You spend more time with certain people than you do with other people. And that's a continual process, right? Of assessing kind of how people are going to fit in with where you want to go, because part of how your relationships might be built right now is that you kind of just like go along with what your mates do, and there's like nothing wrong with that. People do that, right? It's like healthy and normal, but that could be to the detriment of your own progress, and that could derail you a lot, right? So I think we also need to be aware that we're all actually quite influenceable, if that's a word, when we're trying to make change. So highlight where, you know, the people you care about and how their opinions are going to impact you as you go along. Because if you don't take, you know, check of that, I guess in my experience, I go over to my nan's and she'd be like, hey, well, you want some biscuits? You know, biscuits are going to make it harder. Biscuits are going to derail and erode the change you're trying to instigate. And your nan's going to feel a bit maybe offended, maybe a bit uncomfortable with you kind of saying, I'm good, you know? So that's something to reflect on. But also I think you might not even be at that stage where you can say like no to people in your relationships, right? You might be strung out, you might be frustrated, you might be just desperate for change. So I guess something else that I think a lot of people don't think about readily when they think about making change towards weight loss and healthy habits is actually just like rest. Rest is so important in all of this. Mental rest, physical rest, our relationship with our phone and tech. You know, if you're really kind of mad at the world and at everything, because you've been non-stop doom scrolling the news because the news loves to say everything's terrible, that's gonna kind of derail your focus and your progress, right? Because there are things wrong in the world. There are things that are bad. There are, you know, some people could definitely argue that like overall societally in the West, things are going downhill, and like that's a valid thing to feel. But ultimately, what can we do about it? If you want to organise, you want to become an MP, and I'm tempted to organise and join a political party. I joined the Green Party and be like, this sucks. We need to force them to do better. The system. We need to push back against all this. Great. But right in this moment, action will pay off more for you, and then ultimately what you care about and where you want to go, right? So like doom scrolling forever, or doom scrolling on news, or doom scrolling on Twitter or X or whatever you doom scroll on is going to erode your ability to do things like move, to have then more energy to go and have habits that will fuel you more to go and do things that matter, right? Yeah, you know, the war in the Middle East is bad right now. Not denying that. But I guess what I feel when things aren't great, we should feel mad about it for a bit. But if that's all we do, where do we go? In my experience with clients, like nowhere, right? We kind of stay stuck in that pit. And then we struggle to form habits. We struggle to make progress on our goals. And if we don't make progress on our goals, then we feel stuck. And that's why addressing these things is really important. The emotional aspect is really important of this. And having space to feel those feelings is really important, right? Weight loss can't really happen if you aren't feeling what you're feeling directly, right? If you don't talk about it and feel it through, you're not going to go anywhere, man. It's the same with your habits. If you can't emotionally address your habits and what they're doing for you, and then make a little change here, there, make a little change there, it's not going to happen. You know, I'm going to be real with you guys. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to be in the same place 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years from now. And I think the news is really good at making us feel those intense negative feelings. And that doesn't help us make things change. Being informed doesn't always inform action. That's what I'm trying to say. So, that's where I'm going to leave it today. The ideal formula. Check in with your own feelings. Figure out why you're doing it. Be aware of things that will pull your motivation away from you. And address how relationships will change as you instigate the habits. You've been wonderful. I've been Thunderhawk Coaching Will. Take care. Good luck, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.